There are literally over 100 weapons in Expedition 33, but there's only a handful for each character that are actually worth your time to go find and upgrade. For example, one of my favorites for Lune is Column, mainly because it has an awesome set of synergistic perks built around light stains. I generally don't like using weapons for Lune that have perks focused on one particular type of stain because I just feel it limits my options with her too much. But light stains are awesome because they're wildcards. They can count as any other type of stain, and Lune's skill attacks can consume specific stains for powerful boosts. So Column's level 4 perk that gives a 50% chance to generate a light stain anytime stains get consumed is really solid. It basically means you're going to get a bunch of wildcard stains that you can use to boost any of her skills. And then the second and third perks build on the light stain generation to make it even better, giving you an action point and increasing damage by 20% anytime you use a light stain. Plus, Column's power, in other words, its damage output, scales with agility. That's what this A here under agility means. Scaling with agility is a great thing for any weapon because agility/speed is something you should be dumping a lot of attribute points into for every character. It's what determines if you get to go first in battle or if enemies do. And with enough agility points, your characters can sometimes even play twice before the enemy gets a chance to go. So scaling with agility is fantastic, but all weapons actually have 2 combat stats their attack power scales with. For Column, it's agility and vitality. And the S and A indicate how well the weapon's power scales with those stats. It's on the SABCD scale, with S being the best and D being the worst. But keep in mind those letter grades actually improve as you upgrade a weapon. So at low levels, pretty much all weapons have kind of mediocre scaling, but it gets way better as you upgrade. And that stacks on top of the base power increasing as you upgrade. So upgrading weapons is really important once you find the ones you like, especially since every weapon's level 4 perk is unlocked by default, but you'll need to upgrade them to unlock the level 10 and 20 perks. I'm also going to show you the best farms for the catalysts you need for weapon upgrades, but we'll circle back to that later. Let's get through all the weapons first. Column here is also a light element weapon, which means Lune will deal elemental light damage anytime you do a regular base attack, and also when using a skill that doesn't specify a particular type of element for itself. That's actually pretty uncommon for Lune, but it comes into play with other character skills pretty frequently. Every weapon in the game has an elemental aspect like this that determines what type of damage they do, even if it's just the sword icon, which represents physical damage. And enemies can be weak or resistant to different elements. You'll be able to tell when you attack them and see the weakness or resistant indicators. But don't worry too much about choosing weapons based on their elemental aspect. No matter what, you're going to encounter some enemies that are weak to an element and some that are resistant. And there isn't really one particular element that's better than all the others, so you kind of just have to switch up weapons as needed. And don't worry too much about the exact attack power number either. Different weapons do cap out at different values when you max them out at level 33, but for the most part, if you take any 2 weapons and compare them at the same level, their power stats aren't going to be very different from each other. Other factors like what skills and lumina you use will matter a lot more. For Column, you can get it either from defeating a group of enemies near the top of the Fabric Bridge room in Seren, or from this group of enemies on the shoreline west of the Visages Island on the overworld map. Lots of weapons have multiple locations like this, by the way, and if you get the weapon at all of them, they combine to give you free upgrades. You'll only be able to get there a bit later in the main story though, so a solid option for Lune you can get earlier is Kralum, which drops when you defeat the chromatic enemy in the Yellow Harvest region located right over here on the starting peninsula. I mainly like Kralum for its level 10 perk, especially early on because it generates 2 random stains if Lune doesn't have any at the start of her turn, which means she gets 2 for free at the start of every battle, making it much easier to start building up the stains you need to boost her skills. The level 20 perk is really good too though, giving her an action point anytime she consumes at least 1 stain, which you'll probably do on most turns anyway. The level 4 perk can be quite good as well, but it's a little tricky to leverage. It'll boost the damage of skills by 20%, but only for skills based on an element different from the skill you just used. So basically, if you can manage to use a different elemental skill each turn, it's good, but that really only works consistently with specific builds, so I'm not a huge fan of this perk. But there is another weapon for Lune that gives the free stains like Kralum, and it's actually my second favorite after Column. Bedalim has the exact same level 10 and 20 perks of Kralim, so it gives the free stains and action points when consuming stains, but its level 4 perk is way better. It gives a 20% damage boost anytime you use a skill attack that consumes stains, which again, you're probably going to do on most turns anyway. And if you can manage to consume stains multiple turns in a row, the 20% damage boost will actually stack up to 100%. In other words, you can stack the boost up to double damage. Plus, you can get Bedalim really early in the Gestural Village. It's blocked by a paint spike that's tucked away behind the hut that's literally on fire with a Gestural sitting inside it. You'll need the ability to destroy paint spikes first though, and to get that, you need to find 4 of the lost Gestrals and return them to Sastro, who's the Gestral that hangs out at your camp. I showed lost Gestral locations in a video I'll link below, but we've also got a few honorable mention weapons for Lune. Trebuchem gives you a random stain on free aim shots, an action point when consuming stains, and generates 2 stains when doing a base attack. So it's a pretty good early option, especially while you're still learning Lune's stain mechanic. You get Trebuchem from the Catapult and Ranger Sakapatats that you run into in the Ancient Sanctuary during the main story. Potarim, Redalim, and Benesim are all good options if you play Lune primarily as a healer. Potarim and Redalim both generate an extra light stain when using a healing skill, and Potarim also applies the slow status to a random enemy and lets you generate light stains by simply using base attacks, while Redalim gives you a free ice stain at the start of every turn and lets you play again for free when using a healing skill that consumes stains. Benesim actually does that as well, and its other perks lower the AP cost of all healing skills and generate a free earth stain each turn. Potarim comes from defeating the Bourgeon on the overworld map near the Meadows portal. Redalim is in a paint cage in Old Lumiere near the Manor Gardens flag. You just need to complete the main story fight in that area and then double back to head down the path east of the flag. And Benesim is sold by Kasumi, the merchant in the Forgotten Battlefield. Just start at the Ancient Bridge flag, turn around to backtrack a little ways, and head up inside the stone building to find him in the upper room. Now, Scavarum is a bit more advanced and requires a specific playstyle with Lune, but it's a good weapon if you like building up to a big damage boost. It generates a special type of stain called Dark Stains, and when you have 4 of them, you can use them to boost the damage of any skill by an extra 300%. That's 4x damage. You get Scavarum from clearing the boss in the Falling Leaves region. Lithium is similar to Scavarum, but also generates light stains and gives you an action point back when consuming light stains, so it's more versatile. It also deals void damage, which can be useful for a few tough enemies and bosses who are strong against basically everything else. Lithium is on a table while going through a section later in the main story that I don't want to spoil, so I'm just going to show it like this, but if you need help with the exact weapon locations, you can search the weapon's name in the Map Genie map I have linked in the description. But let's check out Maelle's weapons, and Medelim is definitely the best one for most people. In fact, Medelim is arguably one of, if not the best weapon in the game. It lets Maelle start battle immediately in her powerful Virtuose stance, which boosts her damage output by 200%. That's triple damage. So you can start dealing big damage early on with skills like Percy, and absolutely ridiculous damage later on with her more powerful skills like Stendhal. To get Medelim, you need to defeat the champion at the Gestural Village during the main story, but you have to do it specifically with Maelle. So unfortunately, it is kind of missable. If you don't choose Maelle the first time you're at the Gestural Village, then the only way to get Medelim is to challenge and defeat Golgra at the Gestural Village with Maelle, which really isn't feasible until you're much later in the game. But if you only recently got past the champion fight at the Gestural Village, then you could check to see if you have a recent autosave you can load up to roll back to before the fight and make sure you redo it with Maelle. If you did miss Medelim, you can still pick up another one of my favorite weapons for Maelle, also at the Gestural Village, Secarum. Secarum lets you get into Virtuose stance pretty easily as well. Not as easily as Medelim, but all you have to do is destroy an enemy's shield, and you'll be running into a lot of enemies with shields not long after the Gestural Village, so there will be plenty of opportunities for that. Secarum also makes Maelle's free aim shots destroy 2 shields, and when she's in Virtuose stance, she can deal damage through shields, which is super helpful. To get it, in the Gestural Village, you'll need to head back here in a little back alley of the market to find Easdub, fight him, defeat him, and then buy it from him. But another early one I like for Maelle is Brularum. It causes base attacks and any critical hits to apply burn, which is particularly helpful with Maelle because she can use her Swift Stride skill to get into Virtuose Stance by using it on a burning enemy. The level 20 perk is also helpful for building up more burn because it guarantees Maelle will get a critical hit if she's stanceless. So on her first turn, when she's going to be stanceless anyway, you can just do a base attack and all the perks together will ensure you apply 3 burn. And then on the next turn, you can just use Swift Stride to get into Virtuose Stance. You'll get Brularum by defeating the Brulers near the giant anchor in Flying Waters. But if you want Maelle to be even more of a burn bot, then you can use Shantanum. Its level 4 perk automatically puts her into offensive stance if she's stanceless, and the level 10 perk lowers the cost of all her fire skills, which is particularly useful for Spark. It'll only cost 2 action points, and if Maelle's in offensive stance, Spark applies a total of 5 burn. And then at level 20, Shantanum gives Maelle a shield anytime she switches into offensive stance, which the level 4 perk will be triggering often anyway. So this basically gives Maelle extra protection for free very easily. You can buy Shantanum from Claudiso, the merchant in Seren. From the Crumbling Path flag, head over here and climb across the handholds to a spot where you can zip down a light rope to find him a little ways further on. But if you really like shields, then you should be using Barrier Breaker. It actually steals shields away from enemies and applies them to Maelle, which is a super cool perk. And just like Sekirum, she'll switch into Virtuose Stance anytime she destroys a shield. The level 20 perk is a bit more situational, but it can be pretty useful as well to remove a bunch of shields at once if you can just get a mark on the enemy first. Barrier Breaker also deals void damage, so like Lithalim for Lune, it can be especially good against a few specific enemies that are resistant to basically everything else. You'll get Barrier Breaker during the main story, so I don't want to spoil you, but don't worry because it's impossible to miss. But another great one to consider if you like shields is Yevarum. It makes it so Maelle gets a shield anytime the shell status is applied, and then she also gets an action point anytime a shield gets applied. So to leverage those two, you need a way to trigger shell as much as possible. And the best way to do that is to use a few specific lumina: protecting shots, protecting attacks, and SOS shell, which will let you gain shell from free aim shots, base attacks, and when falling below 50% health. Even better would be adding auto shell into the mix, which applies shell at the start of battle. With all of those, you'll frequently trigger shell, which will then trigger Maelle to get a shield as well, so you can easily start stacking up shields. Yevarum also doubles all the shields already on allies when switching into Virtuose Stance, which is awesome if you're using Lumina or other methods to apply shields to other party members. You can pick up Yevarum in the late game from Grauer, the merchant in Renoir's drafts. But let's check out weapons for Verso. Hands down, my favorite is Chevalim, because it lets you shortcut Verso's perfection leveling and just start every battle instantly at the highest rank S. So his damage output is maximized right off the bat. Plus, Chevalim will start stacking additional 20% damage increases for every turn Verso avoids taking damage. And the final perk, gaining Rush from rank S, is nice too, but it's really that first perk that makes Chevalim so good, especially when you know how to leverage it with the machine gun build. The idea here is you start Verso's turn with a bunch of free aim shots, and then use the follow-up skill for a big hit, which gets boosted by up to 500% if you can manage to get 10 free aim shots in before using it. At S rank, follow-up only costs 2 action points to use, but of course the question becomes, how can you get 10 free aim shots every time when you only have a max of 9 action points to start with? Well, the key is to equip a bunch of Lumina that let you generate extra action points. Energizing shots, energizing shell, protecting shots, energizing rush, accelerating shots, energizing powerful, and powerful shots. All of those together will generate a bunch of action points, so you can take a ton of free aim shots. In fact, you'll often be able to do a lot more than 10. And to really supercharge it, you can add in the Energy Master Lumina to virtually double all the AP gain. But honestly, even with just energizing shots and a few others, you'll still be able to regenerate a good number of action points almost every turn. And you can also use this machine gun Lumina build to level up to rank S with Verso using basically any of his weapons, so it's not like it only works with Chevalim. But Chevalim starting at rank S is really nice. The only hitch with Chevalim is Verso can't be healed or gain shields while using it, so it's a little bit more high risk, high reward, but the damage output is honestly so high when you use it properly that it usually doesn't matter much. To get Chevalim, you need to defeat the chromatic enemy in the Crimson Forest region. But another one I really like for Verso is Duliso. It lets you play again for free after a base attack, and a base attack will now give 4 perfection. So you can always start with a base attack every turn, and then follow up with a skill attack, for example, and this will help Verso rank up his perfection mechanic much faster. Oh, and base attack damage is increased by 50%. You'll get Duliso during the main story in the Forgotten Battlefield, so you can't miss it. But earlier than that, you can get another one of my favorites, Galtaram. Instead of losing an entire rank when taking damage like normal, Galtaram makes it so Verso just loses perfection points. And the level 20 perk also gives 2 perfection points for free at the start of every one of his turns. So both of those together really help you keep Verso's perfection rank up, ensuring he has a higher damage output. The perk that applies Rush on gaining rank S is definitely nice too, but I feel it's the other 2 perks that really make Galtaram shine. I originally got Galtaram from fighting this group of enemies in the field south of Monoco Station, but you can get it earlier by defeating the Bourgeon on the overworld map near the Stonewaves Cliffs south entrance. A couple of honorable mentions for Verso as well. Corpesso and Confuso are both good for burn stacking builds, which can be really powerful. I'll save the details for a dedicated builds video, but basically the idea is if you can stack up a ton of burns, the passive damage they do will kill enemies quickly and easily. With Verso, the key to doing this is typically combining the Burning Shots Lumina along with a few others with the free aim machine gun build we mentioned earlier. That lets you build up a ton of burns with free aim shots each turn. Corpesso and Confuso both have a perk that increases burn damage the higher Verso's rank is, and Corpesso also allows Verso to apply 2 burns for each rank with his base attack and rewards you with an action point each time Verso ranks up. But I prefer Confuso for the burn stacking build because it will apply burn on critical hits, which in the late game you can easily get with virtually every single hit. You just need to put enough attribute points into his luck/critical rate stat and equip a few pictos that boost the critical rate stat more to get it close to 100%. And Confuso also applies burn in place of marks, which helps apply even more burns. You'll find Confuso near the end of the Path of Joy in the Visages region. Just keep an eye out for this opening on the left before getting to the Joy Mask itself, where it's being guarded by a Neveron. And Corpesso comes from defeating the first group of enemies in the Dark Shores region. Now, for Sciel, my favorite weapon is definitely Tisserand because of all of its perks for extending her powerful Twilight state. We covered how Sciel's mechanics work in my builds guide, so I won't go into it much, but basically, each of Sciel's skills generate either sun or moon charges, kind of like how Lune's skills generate various different elements. And when Sciel has both sun and moon charges built up, they get consumed to trigger the Twilight state, which boosts her damage output. And it also boosts her Foretell buildup, and Foretell gets consumed by certain skills to boost her damage even further. So Tisserand lets you use the powerful Twilight state even more by extending it by 1 turn with the level 10 perk. Plus its level 4 perk lets you extend Twilight even further by strategically using moon charges while in Twilight. And with the level 20 perk, you get to play again immediately when you enter Twilight. Plus the base perk boosts the damage output of sun skills, which are often what you're going to be using before entering Twilight. So it's really just a fantastic set of perks that all synergize with each other very easily to boost Sciel's damage output a bunch. Fortunately, you're guaranteed to get Tisserand during the main story in the Seren region. But I also really like Martinon for Sciel. It's great for enhancing the Twilight state, because with its level 4 and 10 perks, it deals an extra chunk of damage to all enemies when she enters Twilight based on how many sun and moon charges you've built up. And it also applies 2 Foretell to each enemy for each charge you've built up, giving you a fast way to push the Foretell counts higher, which boosts Sciel's damage output during Twilight even more. And then the level 20 perk just makes it all even better, because it doubles sun and moon charge generation. So before triggering Twilight, you'll be able to build up more sun and moon charges and then consume them all to maximize the damage boost. You can buy Martinon from Fusoka in the Flying Manor, but the Flying Manor is only accessible in the late game, so one that you can get much earlier is Gobluson. It has a really unique perk that gives you free extra Foretell buildup during Twilight. Basically, anytime you apply Foretell to an enemy while in Twilight, it chains to another random enemy. And then the level 10 perk applies a free burn for every 3 Foretell, and the level 20 boosts fire damage from skills by 20%. So definitely a solid option, and really nice that you can get it fairly early. You can either defeat the chromatic Goblu on the map to get it, or just buy it from the merchants in the coastal cave. But even earlier than that, you can get Lustasan. Its level 4 perk is really nice, especially when you're still learning Sciel's mechanics, because it ensures you don't waste foretell buildup by reapplying any left over to another enemy when you kill the first one. It also triggers a damage boosting mark anytime you consume foretell, which is really nice, and the level 20 perk boosts dark damage from skills by 20%. Defeating the chromatic luster in the Forgotten Battlefield will snag you Lustisan. A couple quick honorable mentions for Sciel. If you don't like how complex her mechanics are with the sun and moon charges and foretell and twilight and all that, Minasan is a great weapon to simplify how Sciel works. Basically, it completely removes her ability to generate moon charges, which means you effectively can't enter the twilight state anymore, so you don't even need to worry about using specific skills to generate sun and moon charges at the right time. Instead, Sciel's playstyle becomes focused on simply stacking up as many sun charges as possible and applying as much foretell to enemies as possible. The level 4 perk increases damage by 10% for each foretell on the enemy, which is pretty generous considering you can stack 10 of them for up to a 100% damage boost. And the level 10 perk gives you back an action point for each foretell you consume as long as you have at least one sun charge active, which you almost certainly will at all times. So that gives you lots of action points back. And then the level 20 perk lets you apply 5 foretell at the cost of just 1 sun charge when you do a base attack. So a very simple way for you to get those damage boosting foretells on enemies. Minasan is dropped by the chromatic Chaplier in the Crows region. But if you prefer to play Sciel in a support or healer role, then you'll want Range San or Ramasan. Range San gives Sciel a bit of health for applying foretell, lowers the action point cost of all healing skills, and increases the effectiveness of healing based on how many moon charges she has built up. Ramasan can consume moon charges to heal allies, generate moon charges with the base attack, and increases the moon charge buildup rate. And it's great you can get both of these early on. Range San is sold by Jerry, the merchant in the Stonewave Cliffs. Start off at the old farm flag and then head right around this little house to find a small open area behind it. Then just crawl through the tunnel at the back of this area to find Jerry. And Ramasan comes from defeating a small group of regular enemies just inside the Forgotten Battlefield south entrance. But then we have Monoco, and one of my absolute favorite weapons in the game, Fragraro. This one's really cool because if you know how to build around it properly, it basically lets you choose which mask you want to activate on Monoco's bestial wheel at any time, which means you can get to choose which skill you're boosting at any time. The key is Fragraro's base perk that spins the bestial wheel to a random value when you use a free aim shot. So if you combine this with the machine gun free aim shot we looked at with Verso, you can just take a bunch of free aim shots each turn to get the bestial wheel on whatever color mask you want. Plus, Fragraro makes all the free aim shots deal double damage, and its level 20 perk gives you a 100% critical chance while in the powerful gold Almighty Mask. Almighty Mask is basically the wildcard option, letting you activate the boost on any and all of Monoco's skills, no matter what specific color mask they want. You can buy Fragraro from Mistra, the merchant inside the monolith. But I do also like Joyaro for Monoco because it starts him off immediately in Almighty Mask on his first turn. Honestly, Joyaro's level 10 perk is a bit hard to leverage. If you can manage to avoid taking damage during his turns, Monoco's damage output will increase for up to 5 turns, which is great, it's just tough to do consistently. But the level 20 perk doubles his break damage output while in Almighty Mask. So you can start battle with a skill like Diminuer Thunder that already applies a lot of break buildup to boost it even more, and then on the next turn, or maybe just one turn after that, you should be able to fully stun the enemy. You need to defeat the ultimate Sakapatat in the Endless Night Sanctuary to get Joyaro. Honestly though, my second favorite weapon for Monoco after Fragraro is probably Sidaro. Its level 4 perk straight up doubles Monoco's damage output and lets you push damage even higher if you can continue to use upgraded skills each turn, which just means using a skill that has a colored mask perk matching the current position of the bestial wheel. And the level 10 perk, which spins the bestial wheel to a random value with a base attack, is really nice to get yourself another option without spending any action points when you don't like what it's currently on. And the level 20 perk that gives an action point to allies when you use an upgraded skill is really nice too. You can either go back to the Gestural Village and defeat Golgro with Monoco to get Sidaro, or visit the merchant Fusoka in the Flying Manor to just buy it. Unfortunately though, like Fragraro and Joyaro, that's still late in the game, so for a decent early upgrade for Monoco, you can grab Nusaro in Old Lumiere. You'll be able to get it right after the cutscene with Monoco. Just head down from the right street flag until you come to a small open area with a ruined doorway on the right side. Head through that and then around behind the enemies to find Nusaro on the ground. Nusaro is mainly a decent option for its level 10 perk, which simply boosts damage output by 30% when you use a skill with the correct colored mask to match the bestial wheel to get its upgrade. But the level 20 upgrade is actually quite good too, because it gives an action point every time you change masks, which will happen basically every turn. Getting weapons upgraded to unlock all their perks and push their attack power stat higher requires certain chroma catalysts though. So I made this first video on the left for you if you want to see all the best farming locations for each type. But there's something that's even more important than finding and upgrading the best weapons, and that's using all the best Pictos and Lumina. Pictos and Lumina are by far the most important items in the game, and they're what truly let you become overpowered. And that's why I made you this video on the right to show you which ones are best and where to find them all. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you over there in just a second.